Unmask the supernatural. Explore the history and future of parapsychology. Analyze legends and folklore. And welcome entertaining and informative guests as they probe irresistible mysteries that continue to haunt us. They may not always agree. In fact, they won't. But the Dueling Parapsychologists provide an investigative podcast that's not afraid to seek the truth and separate nonsense. With your hosts, Elliott Van Dusen and Darryl Walsh. Welcome to the Dueling Parapsychologists podcast.
Welcome to another episode. I think it's episode 4 of the Dueling Parapsychologist podcast. Tonight, we have a very special guest. His name's Dedrick Hilton. I actually met him, ran an advertisement inquiry asking for law enforcement stories. And our guest is a former correctional officer that had a spooky story that he'll tell you on this episode. And you'll also find it in my book that's coming out next month called More Supernatural Encounters from Law Enforcement. He's a paranormal investigator down in South Carolina. He's a hoodoo specialist, which I am actually not too familiar with. So I look forward to this episode learning a lot. You've heard of it as well, but I mean, you and I are probably more familiar with voodoo, the religion of voodoo, and spells and dark magic and things like that you can imagine. But I'm really interested in tonight's episode. I think that folks will find this one really entertaining.
Yes, they should.
The other thing that we want to mention too is that we have a big event coming up. It's October 16th in Halifax, Nova Scotia. It's going to be held at the very haunted, but hard to find info on Weston, Nova Scotia. We actually tried to pick a location that was haunted, just to kind of give the guests like a little bit extra. I mean, you're coming to a paranormal event. What better place to go to than a haunted hotel?
Yep.
But actually, I checked your books, Ghost of Nova Scotia. So the 10th anniversary Ghost of Nova Scotia, Ghost Waters, Canada's Haunted Seas and Shores. I checked Steve Vernon's books. I checked Vernon Oikel's books. I checked even Helen Creighton's Blue Nose Ghost books.
I could have told you it wasn't in anybody's.
It's not.
It's internet. It's been a vague rumor at the time that I did Ghost of Nova Scotia 10th anniversary. It was still so vague a rumor that there wasn't enough for me to put it in the book. And it was one of those things that I kind of thought, well, I'll wait and then I'll do the 15th anniversary and, maybe I'll be able to stick it in there. But we'll be coming up on the 25th anniversary soon. So I'll definitely stick it to that one. But it was never solid enough for me to say, I could have, for instance, you hear a lot of stuff of what happens in hospitals. And sometimes it's just a one or two sentence, right? But if you're doing a whole bunch of stuff, then you can throw a 1 or 2 sentence story in there, and it's sufficient. But the Weston which was called the Nova Scotian, always eluded me. And same with the Lord Nelson Hotel.
Yes.
I've
heard the same thing. It's haunted, but there's no info on it. You can search the internet. You can't find any stories on it. Luckily, just by chance, I was having the dogs groomed this week, and my groomer happened to have worked at the Westin. And so she told me a couple of stories, which I told you, and one of them was in our ad for this event. So there's apparently a lady in a white nightgown that appears in people's rooms. They've seen the ghost walk through the door. They've seen the ghost just appear in the room. Seems to be around circulating around the 8th floor. Seems to be kind of the hotbed activity. But guests would phone down and say, I don't want anything done and whatnot, but I just want to let you guys know something weird happened. And then they would proceed to tell them that this lady in white appeared in the room and disappeared.
Yep.
And didn't speak to them or anything like that. It was, very, very strange apparitional experience. And this happened to multiple guests. This wasn't just one guest reporting it. This was like multiple different guests. The other thing is that the witness that spoke to me had actually seen an apparition at the Westin, which I haven't told you about, until this podcast. So she said she used to get rooms for $35 because she's an employee at the hotel. So her parents wanted to spend a night downtown Halifax, rented them a room, and they hung out and they had dinner, and they ended up later on that evening ordering some room service. So she thought, to be polite to the staff, she'll bring the plates down to the kitchen herself because she's an employee there. So she took the service elevator, not the main elevator that's in the Westin's lobby. Took the service elevator. When the door opened up, there was a man in a complete black trench coat with a black hat and a big brim, and he was kind of looking downward so you couldn't see his eyes. And she's a polite Cape Breton girl. She's like, "Hello, how are you tonight?" And nothing. Guy didn't move. Guy didn't look up. So she kind of started to feel a little awkward. She said her stomach was kind of getting that knot feeling, and she's like, "I don't know if I should get on this elevator. Like, there's a strange guy in the corner of the elevator. It's late at night." She was 19-year-old female at the time, but she gets on anyway, pushes the button to go down to the kitchen, and when the door opens up, she turns around to say good night to him, and he's gone. And I looked at her and I said, "Well, it's got to be a fucking ghost. Where else did it go?" It's not like the movies where they're crawling in through the vents or anything like that. I mean, you saw a man standing in the elevator. It didn't stop anywhere else until you got to where you were going in the kitchen, and you turn around and it's gone. Gone. That's an apparitional sighting. Yeah, it's a strong apparitional sighting, and the lady's completely credible. Like, I thought that was a really cool story. So to the event. So it's October 16th. 2021. It's going to be from 7 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time until 11 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time. It's going to involve a 3-course meal. The menu is on our website. You can go to ppri.net/tickets. It'll bring you to the Eventbrite website where you can see the full menu, see the full details. But basically, you'll have a 3-course meal. There will be a private bartender in the room. Darryll and I have included some complimentary bottles of wine for the guest tables. We're going to do a lecture on hauntings, poltergeist apparitions, demons. Then we're going to show you equipment that is used. They call it ghost hunting equipment, but it's equipment that is used during parapsychological investigations. And we'll explain to you why we use these things. There's actually or don't. Yes, there's some equipments, and I am going to bring one piece that is junk. And anyone that attended the Lewisburg event that I was at will know what piece of equipment this is that I shit all over, because it is complete garbage. But anyways, we will get into that at the Westin. And then the final thing is you'll actually get to see real cursed and haunted objects that Darryll and I have collected over our career in parapsychology. Yeah. There's going to be 4 items, maybe more depending. But we'll see. And so tickets are $125. Eventbrite unfortunately does charge fees, so the total cost is $133.63, taxes, fees in. Again, it is justified because we have to pay for the venue, we have to pay for the 3-course meal, we have to pay for the wine, and of course we're running ads as well, so there's incidental fees that we have to cover off. Basically, at the end of the day, we are doing this for you, the public. And any money that is left over goes back into, which I don't anticipate that there will, but any money that is left over will go back into our organizations, because, again, we do run ads to collect stories, and we purchase, miscellaneous items. We have licenses and fees that we got to pay for. So constantly, it's a great cause. I've only had a couple of complaints about the price, but I'm actually in the process of writing an article that you'll be able to find on the internet once it's released, called Profit in the Paranormal. And I'm going to talk to you about some people that scam people out of money in the paranormal. No. But I'm also going to talk to you about the unfortunate side of things, where you've got serious scientists trying to, prove the existence of these supernatural things, and they cannot get money for grants and research, and they are actually working a full-time job, maintaining a family, and doing parapsychology work on the side of their desk, corner of their desk. I always get that wrong as well. Sarah's going to laugh at that. And they fund it out of their own pocket. And, Darryll certainly funded quite a bit out of his own pocket, so have I. And my co-founder, Spencer Collier, funds a lot of stuff for future.
Interesting thing. Saw it today. Professor Chris French, who was always a skeptic, said that he thinks parapsychology is a actual science,
not a pseudoscience.
And not a pseudoscience.
I saw that.
You saw it on Twitter?
Yeah, I saw that.
Because I know he retired from Goldsmith College, where I had interviewed him for Supernatural Investigator 9 years ago. And nice man, really nice man. Even if talking about stuff I mentioned, I believe, in Bigfoot in a very small number in a very, very, very small location. And, but, did face him because he's used to hearing a lot worse. And so just a gentleman, just a really nice guy.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. So, Darryll and I hope that you guys come and join us at the event. Again, it's October 16th. You get tickets at ppri.net/tickets. There's only a limited amount. There's 40 seats in total. I believe 11 out of 40 are spoken for already. So try and sign up as early as you can because there's no guarantee that you'll get a seat. And I think that's it. I think we're ready for some voodoo.
I think we are. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Enjoy. All right. Welcome to another episode of the Duelling Parapsychologists podcast. Tonight we have a very special guest, Dedrick Hilton, and he is from South Carolina. He's a paranormal investigator, but he's also a hoodoo specialist, which I don't know a whole lot about. We've had a conversation before about it, but we'll get Dedrick to talk all about that. Welcome to the show, Dedrick.
Hey, how's everyone?
Great. I want to start out how we met is I'm writing my third book, which comes out next month, called More Supernatural Encounters from Law Enforcement. And you used to be a correctional officer, and you had a story to share that's going to be in the book. So why don't we start out with that, and you tell us about your experience when you were a correctional supervisor.
Yes, I was working for Department of Juvenile Justice Corrections here in Columbia, South Carolina, and we deal with the juvenile population. And unfortunately, before I had started there was a situation where a juvenile committed suicide inside his cell. And no one ever informed me about the situation. And me being a supervisor, my job late night is to roam around, patrol, make sure everything's legit. And I used to sit down on this unit called F-Wing. And at nighttime, I would see like an apparition figure. I guess it looked real to me, of a young juvenile male, probably between the age of 13 to 16. And he would just be staring at me like in confusion or concern. And at this time, it just went on for like about a month, and I was getting sick at the time, and I kept having all these stomach cramps and pains. And every night between the hours of 12 and 2, I would see this boy, and I'll like drift off and nod off, kind of like sleep, because I was, like I said, I was sick. Long story short, I ended up going to the VA hospital, getting checked out, and they had to do a colonoscopy exam on me. And the colonoscopy exam, they found 3 polyps in me, which they laser removed from my body. And I went back and told my staff like weeks later, like, yeah, I must have been real sick. Cause I said I used to hallucinate, and I thought hallucinating seeing a young gentleman about 13, 16 outside his cell all the time between certain hours. And that's when the head supervisor informed me, like, what? That was such and such juvenile. He had hung himself inside his cell. And unfortunately, the officers at that time didn't patrol around. So they say he had to be dead between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. when the next shift came in. So the apparition I was seeing that looked like they were concerned about me was actually the juvenile that hung himself.
Wow, that was one of the cool stories that I collected in the upcoming book. I thought that was really cool. And then you were nice enough too to go out and give me some pictures of the institution there. So that was really cool. Now, you're also a paranormal investigator as well. So what kind of things have you worked on down in the deep south there?
Well, I do paranormal investigation and advising. And I stress the advising part because sometimes I get people that reach out to me and they just might be curious. And before I get involved with going to people's homes and investigating, I do an overall assessment of the situation, making sure how long the activity is going on. You want to make sure that the people you're dealing with are not on drugs themselves or anything, but just an overall assessment before you go out. And I have various situations that occurred. I have one of a lady in Atlanta called me, said she felt like she was experiencing demonic possessions. And I only have 3 of those, but other ones I've been called out because people said that they had spirits in their home, items moving around, bumps in the night. Once again, I conduct the assessment, And sometimes when I go into the individual homes, what I find out oftentimes is, are there apparitions or ghosts that are there? There might be some activity, a history of a situation take place, but I also have went out and conducted spiritual cleansing. And that goes into the line of work which I do with the hoodoo stuff, because I mix that in here in South Carolina with the paranormal investigations.
Speaking of, I might be jumping the gun right now, but how strong is hoodoo in South Carolina compared to where we always normally think about it in Louisiana area? You know, is it as strong? I mean, I know it's I know it's there, but I don't know its boundaries. Let's put it. What are the boundaries of belief and practice of hoodoo? That might be a better way of putting it.
Right, and I'm glad you used the word belief too, because in South Carolina and Georgia and northern parts of Florida, it's more what we call root work / hoodoo. You don't really hear the elders say hoodoo too much, but we say it in today's term because, you know, time change, terminology change. But if you go amongst the elders, they say root work. When people do root work. Now, the difference between us over here on the East Coast and what goes on in Louisiana is really big on voodoo. And voodoo is an actual religion versus root work or hoodoo is spiritual practice. Some people might refer to it as Geechee or Gullah folk magic, but usually we say root work. If you're here in South Carolina, you'll hear people say, man, I don't go to that town over there because them boys over there is rooted up. And what they're talking about, people that practice root. Now, voodoo in Louisiana, you have a lot of that came in from the slaves and the runaway mulattoes from the Haitian Revolution. And they brought voodoo with them into Louisiana. Also, you had different other customs from different islands coming in to Louisiana. The East Coast over here, it was more created or homegrown over here. Like Gullah hoodoo and root work is homegrown on this soil. So the herbs we use is from the ground here. It was started during slavery, and the slave were using it because there was no health plan. And it originally was used to help cure fevers, illnesses, strange bug bites. And the slave master didn't have a good medical plan either, because doctors was not in abundance like that. So when his children get sick, he would send them out amongst the slaves, and he knew who the root doctor was. And the slave master would get treatment from the root lady to help cure his children.
Interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. So hoodoo, from my understanding, is more a North American phenomena as opposed to voodoo, which originated, is it from Haiti?
Well, it came by way of Africa into Haiti. And once it hit the Caribbean, it branched off into different versions. Like Haiti, you have Haitian voodoo with Papa Legba and all that. Dominican Republic got their own version, which is African influence, called 21 Division or 21 Division. Then you have South America. Then you got Puerto Rico and Cuba with Santeria. And so there's various versions of it throughout the islands, but by way of Africa. But hoodoo and root work, that's homegrown. And it's not a religion versus voodoo and Santeria. You have to be initiated into that. You have to study under someone. Root work, you know what I mean? Your family member might teach it to you if they've been practicing it. You might pick it up from the elder. But an interesting thing about root work is in South Carolina and like Georgia, particularly South Carolina and Georgia, the low country areas, it's heavily embedded in the culture to the point that most people overlook it because it's so embedded into the culture.
Interesting. So with hoodoo, you just talked about how the slave owners would actually resort to the root work to help with sickness and illness, which to me seems like a positive thing. Is there a negative thing or like black magic involved with hoodoo?
Well, with root work, over the years, over the decades, it became in certain communities listed as something negative, something that backwood, uneducated Black people do. As slavery went on and ended, it started evolving into, hey, I'm gonna go see the root lady because I might want to protect my lover, or I might want to get my lover back. Somebody messing with my lover. It went on to, in the early 1900s, to, well, I want to buy a house. And then as blacks migrated up north, people started doing root work to win court cases, to win lottery numbers. Is there a negative component to it? There's always a negative component. Even with voodoo, there's always a negative component. It's just a matter of who you speaking with. Now, the higher up the ladder you get with educated Black Americans, is something that is not spoken about. And if it's spoken about, it's spoken about very negative.
Very interesting. So I believe you and I had talked about one thing that could be done, and I don't know if it's in hoodoo or voodoo, but for example, if a woman suspected that her husband was messing around on her, she could put a curse or whatever the terminology would be on him so that his penis will only work with her and not with other women. Have you heard of any other
whole bunch of them? Let me tell you, I'm glad you mentioned that.
interesting curses, I guess, for a lack of a better word.
What is the curse, actually?
Let me tell you about some of the spell work, the various spell. All right, another thing that's big about voodoo and hoodoo, the difference between them. Over here in the Southeast, candle magic is really big in root work. Now, this candle here is called a Dumi candle. And some of the stuff is listed in listed negra condition vela, which means blacklist condition candle. Now, what you do on this candle in root work, you don't see this in voodoo. This here says evil to these so named people. And basically it's to harm people that cause problem, and it'll cause problems, bad luck, sickness, poverty, failure to your enemies, and death.
Wow.
Now, when you do this candle, it's a 7-day, this is what you call a 7-day candle. You would write down, if you could get it on the candle, your enemy's names, write it down on a paper numerous times. 7 in root work usually means God. So that's something positive, but you might want to write down negative 9 times or 5 times. Those are the numbers that's usually used for negative stuff. And you fold it inwards with the names on it. Let the candle burn for 7 days. And you meditate on it twice a day, 3 times a day. Certain candles come with readings that you need to read. Let me see if this one here, this is a success candle, which we'll talk about later. Some of the candles have scriptures on it that you're supposed to read a certain amount of times a day to, I would say, activate the spell work. Now, that's if you want to cause harm to somebody. Now, some of the love spells, there's all different type of love spells. Like there's a sweet potato love spell. You get a sweet potato, you split it in half in the middle, take a yellow sheet of paper, write your lover name down on it a certain amount of times, put it inside the sweet potato, let it sit in a closet somewhere, like inside a Tupperware or a jar. Now, that love spell takes longer. And over time, your lover will become more softer and kinder and gentler towards you. And if you want them back, once it starts sprouting, then you're supposed to take it and bury it in the ground. There's other love spells that which is pretty aggressive. The one that when I moved to South Carolina, they told me, they're like, don't eat nothing red from a woman from the Low Country, which is like Charleston, Georgetown, Orangeburg area. And I'm like, why? They'd be like, because they put their menstrual blood in it to control the men. They take their menstrual blood, mix it up in spaghetti, red rice, and you eat it, and it's a formidable way of them spiritually controlling you. So you're dealing with a lot of metaphysical and spiritual components with it. And like I said, there's hundreds of them. There's hundreds of spells that you could do in terms of love spell. If you want to get your lover real fast, see if I have one laying around. You'll take like a jar like this, right?
Yep.
Fill it up with sugar. Walk around with it throughout the week and just shake it and meditate on your lover. Well, I use sugar because that's a rapid way of speeding up the spell process. The original spell is molasses, but as we know, molasses drip real slow. So if you really want this lover fast, you're gonna put the sugar in this jar like this to keep shaking it up throughout the day and meditate on them, and it's supposed to bring them back.
Wow, this is interesting. So where did all this stem from? Like, where did this originate from, where they would come up with these spells and start to see like a correlation where it was starting to work, or they would have some success with it?
Well, like I said, it was first noticed back on plantations during slavery, and originally it was used to help heal people. Because people couldn't go to the doctor. Like, for example, like if a baby has a hiccup, and I see my ex-in-laws do this, they'll take a brown paper bag, lick it, put it on the baby head. Eventually, the baby will stop hiccuping. Like supposed to be right away. If the baby has the colic and is crying and crying and crying, we had to do this for my daughter. And I'm a very healthy guy, and I'm very conservative about certain things. And I was like, no one's blowing tobacco smoke on my newborn baby. But the elders from the Low Country, my father was like, listen, let us help you with this. I went to the store, got some cigarettes like they told me to do, and blew it over the baby, which is my daughter, and she stopped crying. The colic went away. Like within an hour, and she was crying for 3 days straight, almost.
Wow.
So these remedies been around, like I said, health-wise, as time went on, then people started using them for different things. Like, hey, I want to get this person back because they crossed my family. Or, hey, I need help because the judge is trying to lock me up. And when you heard the term root, because there was a guy named Dr. Buzzard, which was one of the most famous root doctors ever in America here. Dr. Buzzard in South Carolina, St. Helena Island. Mr. Stephen Robeson was his name. And he used to sit in the back of the courtroom and chew a root and just stare. He used to wear these dark purple shades and stare at the judge. And when he get to chewing that root, the elders said, wherever you was in court for, always got thrown out.
Wow, that's interesting.
So over time, it just changed, and people just used the spell work for various things. They did like the shut your mouth spell could be used for protection, or it could be used against somebody. You could use it for good, use it for bad. And I just think it just kept evolving. There's no true basis where it came from, but the stuff I'm sharing with you, these spells are hundreds of years old. These are not new spells. The stuff I'm sharing with you, they've been talking about it, whispering about it in the Black communities for hundreds of years, all the way from South Carolina to New York.
That's really interesting. Darryll, you're more familiar with the folklore in Nova Scotia because you've been doing this double the amount of years I've been doing it. Are you familiar with anything like that up here in Nova Scotia?
There was one story I came across, and there wasn't enough details to flesh it out for a book. But there was one, and it was framed in the hoodoo/voodoo context. And now, don't ask me, it's been too long. It's been 20 years since I came across it. But it was just the way they spoke of it. But other than that one story that was framed in the hoodoo context, there's nothing up here that I can that I could say there's any area or people or anything like that. Something else, it's triggering another memory, but a lot of stuff is witchcraft up here, and then gets called various other things as well. So
I'm familiar with like Nova Scotia having a history of witchcraft, which would probably follow some similar things. They dabble in spells and black magic, white magic. But yeah, it's interesting, especially like my background is criminology and sociology and psychology. So I always have an interest in like sociological aspects of the paranormal. So for example, like you were talking about, different ways to like blowing the smoke in the baby's face to help with colic. Well, it's interesting because my 15-month-old has like 6 teeth coming in right now, so she's very cranky. And of course, one of the old wives' tales that you always hear is to put brandy on their gums and stuff like that. So it's kind of interesting how, different societies have different beliefs and, maybe that was kind of a magical thing back then. You dab some brandy on the child and they stop crying kind of thing. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, and now I have heard some very, very unique stories about root work going wrong. Like I remember, like I said, it's whispered in today it's popular, but back like 15 years ago, it wasn't popular to talk about this in the open. It was very folklorish when it was mentioned. But I remember being an undergrad, and the president of my college, we was on a road trip. We were going to the Hamptons, and he told us this story about a woman that found out her husband was cheating on her. So she put a root on him. And he got very sick, very ill. And some family members and say, look, we think you got a root on you. We're going to take you to see this root doctor. We're going to do a ceremony. Go ahead, get you straight. They took him to the root doctor, and as the root doctor working his ceremony, praying over him, reading scriptures, putting wherever he was putting on him at the time, they noticed the wife started getting, she started sweating. She started getting kind of weak looking, and they stopped the ceremony, and they asked her, said, anything you want to tell us? Are you all right? She's like, no, I'm good. Y'all keep going. Y'all keep going. And they went on and went on. And she started getting weak, and she took a seat. And they're like, are you all right? Anything going on? You want to touch? She's like, no, I'm all right. But as she started to get sick and became more sicker, her husband began to get better during the ceremony. And finally, for the grand finale, I guess they hit him with healing oil and some other scriptures, Psalm scriptures, which is used a lot in root work. And he started getting better. And the wife fell out on the ground and started twitching and shaking. And they said a big snake came out of her mouth.
Wow.
Now, that's not the first time I heard that. Is it true? I don't know. But I haven't witnessed that aspect of it. But that's something I've been hearing for years. Like, if root work go wrong, snakes will come out your mouth, or spiders will come out of you if the root work backfires on you, which it can backfire. I'm living proof of that.
That's interesting. So is it kind of the same concept then, like when you're practicing witchcraft? Like if you're going to do a negative spell on somebody, you might want to be prepared that there's going to be some negativity coming back your way, like karma?
That and you got to be, a lot of times nowadays, people are mixing root work with voodoo, and they're calling on spirits from out of voodoo, which these are totally two different schools of thought, and they're calling on the wrong spirits and inviting them into their homes and playing around with people like Papa Legba, the Red Baron, all these people. It could go south real fast.
And so you just mentioned like the Baron there, or a lot of people, Baron Samedi. That's from the voodoo religion, is it?
Correct. Out of Haiti.
What's his role? Is he like a demon? Is he like a god? What is he?
Well, he's like Papa Legba. They're like spiritual people like that, connected to different worlds, spiritual worlds. And like Papa Legba is a trickster. Like he's a trickster. He's a prankster. You can call on to get you into different spiritual realms, but you have to be careful because he's a trickster. And sometimes it's like, hey, you get what you ask for. You might ask him for something, he'll give it to you, but it might be a string attached to it. And you have to be careful because like you call Papa Legba and try to use him against other people. And as we say in the Carolinas here, well, they prayed up. Nobody can get to them. And if they're prayed up, well, Papa Legba might turn around and do something to you. You got to be careful with summoning spirits. You go cast a root on somebody that don't deserve it. That's karma. And karma energy is going to come back on you. Now, what's interesting, because I study paranormal stuff, obviously, and I guess our community never looked at it, that root work, hoodoo, there's paranormal elements to it. There's metaphysical elements to it. And I think that's unique in itself in identifying it. Because when I come across people and they familiar that I practice root work or study it, and then they find out about the paranormal side, they're like, well, what that got to do with anything? Because most times we think paranormal, we think ghosts. But there's a huge paranormal, the side, the unexplainable, what traditional scientists cannot explain. And there's a huge paranormal aspect to root work that is often overlooked. And once you start studying and you can correlate the two, well, hell, you could create a pretty nasty spell.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you for sure. Have you ever had a case where, I guess this would be more like voodoo, where they're kind of like summoning spirits, but where somebody was doing like voodoo or hoodoo, trying to summon something, much like we would see like in a Roman Catholic kind of case, like with a Ouija board or a seance, and all of a sudden now they've got like a haunting that they didn't necessarily, mean to create, and now they have to call a paranormal investigator to help them with it.
I like in our community, we don't mess with the Ouija board too much. Well, that's like a major no-no, like that and snakes. They'll run from both. But I have, like I said, I have seen people mess with candle work, at the wrong time, certain colored candles at the wrong time. I have seen people call on spirits, and like I said, now they got something in their home that's going bump at night and daytime. Like I said, I had a young lady call me, say there were maggots randomly popping up in her house, and she didn't have any spoiled food. At church, my in-laws' church, this was like years ago, almost a decade ago, seen a woman that showed signs of a possession. And in the middle of church service, she just started speaking with a deeper voice, and she was ripping up church items, just sitting there ripping church items. And the pastor, they had to take all the kids, put them in the back of the church, and this like at 2 in the afternoon, and they had to get healing oil, which is used in holiness and Pentecostal churches to sanctify you and holy you and for protection. Also used to heal aches and pains too. But anyway, they had to put a blanket over it and pray over her numerous times. They were battling with this woman for like maybe 2.5 hours. It took all the male members to hold her down and everything. And after they finally got her to, calm down and got whatever was inside of her out of her, she came back normal. Her eyes looked normal. Her voice was back normal. And she haven't had any experience like that ever since. Now, in the Black church in the Low Country area, in the Southeast, if somebody catch the Holy Ghost and they'll start, speaking in tongues and dancing a certain way in a trance, that's paranormal. Believe it or not, people don't want to admit it, but but it's a form of paranormal, and the pastors always say, when they catch the Holy Ghost, don't touch them, because that's God working on them. And if they're battling with dark forces within them, not demonic, but just trying to get saved by God and come to God and be wholly one with God, wherever they're trying to detach from generational curses, if you go grab them, their curses might jump onto you.
It's interesting you say that, because there's a lot of similarities. Like, I'm more familiar with like the Roman Catholic side of things in demonology. And it's the same thing with a person that is allegedly possessed by the demonic, is that you're not supposed to touch the person. So
Right.
It's interesting. There are some similarities there. Again, like I said, the sociological aspect of things really fascinates me.
Yeah, definitely. And I said people are travelers. So like when I talk about things like the hag riding people in the night, and I was talking to someone, they're like, yeah, the Irish have a similar story. And I said, it probably makes sense because, there was a huge Irish population mixed in with the Black population in the Southeast during slavery and after slavery. That's why you have a lot of Black Americans with Irish last names. So obviously, if the people are mixing in, folklores, spiritualities get crossed up too and mixed in together.
That's really interesting, because Darryll and I are running like a long-term phenomenological study called Ghost Project Canada, where we're collecting any story of the supernatural all across Canada and the United States as well. Eventually, we want to expand over to Europe. But basically, we're trying to collect the story, find out what type of phenomena is it. Is it demonic possession? Is it a ghost apparition? Is it a UFO sighting? And then what are the what's the graphics behind it, like the demographics, who's experiencing it, what's the geographical location, and kind of breaking everything down. So it's really interesting that you mentioned that with the mixture of Irish and Black, because we notice things here just in Nova Scotia, for example. So in Cape Breton, up in Inverness, which is named after a Scottish place over in Scotland, they believe that there's fairies there. And if you look at the Scottish history, the folklore, they believe in fairies. What's some other things here, Darryll, that we've kind of noticed that we've may have possibly brought over from Europe?
Banshees in Guysborough, kind of in the Antigonish Guysborough, where the two counties come together. There's Banshee stories, and there's lots of fairy-related stories, and also the I wouldn't quite call them a demon, but just not an evil, and apparition is not the thing either, because it's real. So just an evil little creature. There's lots of places in Cape Breton and also around Antigonish and Guysborough County as well. So you see some of these things coming, and it's interesting if I watch a documentary on Scotland or Ireland or whatever, and they're talking about a ghost or some sort of thing. And I'll say, hey, we got that. It's just down the road, and so it's kind of interesting. But the one that we most have is well, forerunners, of course, but we also have banshees, I'd say. Fairies, number one, forerunners, actually, forerunners, number one, and then fairies, and then banshees, definitely, would be the ones you can point at and say, okay, we know exactly where that came from. And whereas a lot of the other stories, perhaps we don't, that can be just kind of like you said, a mixture, of various cultures.
It's fast. It's absolutely fascinating. I think, as as a scientist, to sit down and look at all this stuff, because you can see where some stuff has, like the folklore's developed into a belief, for example, or maybe there's still something we can't explain that is supernatural, but it's all very fascinating for sure.
And like on the Southeast, I would say a lot of paranormal activity is very cultural. Cultural in the essence, like in the Southeast is home of the Civil War, the Confederacy. We have a lot of dirt roads, like in places like Statesboro, Georgia. I did a paranormal investigation on a dirt road. People said that they have seen a man with overalls, walk across the field, even in the daytime with no head on his shoulder. I heard a story that somebody they lost their head on a combiner, like a tractor, back in the early 1900s. So I go out there to see dirt road places. Then you have the pack house where there's rumors about you can't get a clear story for the town people, which is strange because this is a small town. Like, well, how did the place catch on fire? And some people said the employees got fed up with the staff, locked the doors, and burned the staff up in the building, in this 4-floor building. And just the frame of it is left, and it's in an abandoned field. I've been out there. I did investigations at the Beaver House. Numerous people died at the Beaver House. A girl fell down the stairs and broke her neck in the early 1900s. They say you can see her face in the window at nighttime, but it's a bed and breakfast place. Matter of fact, my cousin got married there. Maybe that's why they ended a divorce. But it's very cultural. Like all types of stories I hear. Like if you see a flickering light in the woods, don't follow it. It'll lure you deeper in the woods, and it's a spirit that's leading you into the woods, an evil spirit, and you'll get lost and no one ever find.
Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting. You're right too about the South with all the history, because you have the Civil War there. Plus you had, like we all know, like the slaves were not treated well at all. And sometimes they would revolt and do things, to the master. So, there is a lot of history there. And from a parapsychological side of things, you can see why it would become very haunted, because you've got that residual energy that has happened from like extreme events like the Civil War. I know Gettysburg is probably one of the most haunted places in America. I mean,
right.
Everyone sees apparitions there, and Darryll and I, we argue sometimes about electronic voice phenomena, but a lot of people get, electronic voice phenomena there.
And I'd argue a lot about the apparitions there too.
Would you?
Yeah.
Would you argue about the apparitions?
Yeah, because all of a sudden, once ghosts became very popular in the 80s, all of a sudden Gettysburg became a very hot spot. It's like, well, how come the thousands of people who went there, for decades before never saw anything, and then all of a sudden you guys are seeing stuff, and then it's on TV, and then everybody is seeing stuff. So yeah, I would argue that a lot of that is sociological or psychosociological.
Well, TV and the paranormal is another interesting topic, and I know you've got some experience with that as well. In fact, we don't want to give out too many details because we're in the super early stages of talking about it, but we possibly, the three of us, may end up doing a television series together with our friend Donna Davies. And that'll be really cool and awesome if that goes ahead. But what kind of experiences have you had with the media? I know Darryll's, he's had his own TV show. He was just in Sightseers as a guest role. I've done a bit of TV work as well. I know that sometimes there's pressures from the director, from the production company to kind of like spice things up. You know what I mean? And create drama when it's not actually there. What's been your experience dealing with the paranormal in the media?
My background has been pretty raw in the essence that I started doing paranormal stuff live on social media. And to be honest and fair, you don't see too many brothers in the paranormal realm. So it caught on fast with social media, like, what? And you get people, and I give them the real up front, because I don't have a studio with lights and all this stuff. So when I'm going live and streaming, like when I did the dirt road haunting at nighttime down in Statesboro, Georgia, where people kept saying they see this man walking across the field with no head. And then another woman said her and her boyfriend was driving down the same dirt road and saw a male figure hover over their car at night with no head on his shoulder. So I give my audience live and real up there. So it's just me and with my sister or my brother, which is the film crew at the time, filming. What I see is like, I'm introducing paranormal phenomena to a whole new community that probably haven't been exposed to on a level like myself and others. And they seem to be enjoying it because it gets the wheels turning, because I get people that write back, say, you know what? I keep seeing my family member, they keep sitting at the foot of the bed, talking to me. And I said, in our community, we was taught that if you see a spirit, a family member come into your room, they're coming to bring you a message, not to harm you. They try to send you a message of protection or relate to somebody else. So we view it different versus like knock 3 times if you're in this room, turn the light on. If you know, it's a different cultural perspective in the Southeast. Now up north, I'm originally from New York. No one up there don't want to deal with ghosts. They don't care how entertained you are. There's no knock 3 times in New York. They're like, y'all can have all that to yourself. But in the Southeast, like I said, it's very historical and cultural, and people are very open to it. You know, they're very open to it. So that's why I have experience. Like, I haven't had anybody try to make me go a different way or anything, or tweak who I am. People are amused when they see it, and they write to me and they want to learn more.
Well, that's good. That sounds like more of a positive experience. You know, I've known some people, you know, like Lloyd Auerbach, the parapsychologist in California. He's walked away from television shows because they've asked him to do ridiculous things that just go against his ethics. I won't go into details, but I know Darryll, for example, you know, if he's asked to do something that he doesn't believe is right, he won't do it.
Right.
And if it means missing out on doing an episode for somebody, then so be it. At least your integrity is still intact.
Well, that's a big thing. Like, in today's time, you see a lot of gimmicky root practitioners on social media. If you go on Facebook right now and put in Conjure Queen, you're gonna see thousands of Conjure Queens out there. And all these people like, I'm 3rd generation. They talk like they're legacy Harvard students. I'm 3rd generation. I'm like, where was you at 5 years ago? 10 years ago? And I'm not saying they're not real, but when I do my shows and I do things and I talk to people, I go live and streaming and talk about spell work, it comes from a place of integrity, because integrity lasts the longest, not gimmicky. Gimmicky, you're here for a day, you're gone, and you're a dime a dozen. I talk about root work from a historical, social, cultural, and scientific perspective. So they're getting the whole shebang with me. I'm not going to do anything where I come on there speaking with, call me now, you know, anything like Cleo or anything like that. You know, you're going to get something real with substance. Me being, I'm working on my doctorate degree now in parapsychology, metaphysical science with a focus in parapsychology. So and when people meet me, sometimes they just think like, oh, he just chasing ghosts. And I'm like, no, a parapsychologist explores all the dynamics before they say, hey, this is actually paranormal. Somebody might be suffering from schizophrenia. And me, my bachelor's in psychology, my master's in individual and family development. I worked in clinical counseling, family drug out my whole life, prior military, law enforcement. So as a parapsychologist, we're supposed to examine the whole picture before we say, yeah, that's a ghost.
Absolutely. And you hit the nail on top of the head. My fiance is going to laugh. I messed that line up one time at a podcast. I may have just messed it up again. Yeah. But you
hit the nail on the head.
So you hit the
At least we'll always know if it's him or it's a doppelganger. because he'll never be able to say it right.
No, exactly. That's how you can test me.
Yeah.
Test the doppelganger. But you actually, you make a very valid point there because, that's how I go into a case. Like, for example, we're working a case right now from Ontario. It's an alleged case of spectrophilia where the client believes that they have been sexually assaulted by an entity. And they're having night terrors, and they're being woken up in the middle of the night. They're shaking. The bed is shaking. So we're working that case right now. And the first thought that comes to my mind is that it's something medical or psychological, that it's some sort of sleep-wake disorder. In fact, we've recorded the client sleeping for the last 3 nights, and ironically, the client has reported they never sleep that well, especially 3 nights in a row. Absolutely nothing has happened the last 3 nights that I've been recording it. And I'm starting to think it could possibly be a placebo effect. The fact that she knows that she has a parapsychologist investigating her case, and the camera's on, and that she's safe, and nothing's occurring. So I'm now even more so leaning towards it possibly being a sleep-wake disorder. So I have to do some more research, and then, of course, put her in touch with the proper people to make that diagnosis. But I mean, that's exactly it. Now, somebody else might get that same case and be like, "You've got a dynamic haunting on the go."
Exactly.
And that's not the way to go.
No, and that could be dangerous. Let me tell you a story. A situation I had the other week. I get a call from a young lady. She reaches out to me, saying her friend is possessed by demons, and he feel like they're trying to kill him, they're trying to strangle him, his heart beating fast, the whole shebang. So I said, all right, once again, I always conduct assessments first. So I finally get the young man on the phone, start going down his history, any drug usage, anything like that, everything about him, that just the details that I need to know to see if there's variables here. I let him talk, and as he's talking, I realize rapid speech, some anxiety levels up and down, thoughts all over the place, scattered thoughts. And I just started talking to him. I spoke to him again 2 days later. And I said, hey, have you ever been, based off of my assessment, I said, have you ever been tested for manic behavior? He's like, I went to a psychiatrist and they put me on medication. Come to find out, when he told me the medication was on, it was for bipolar and manic behavior. And I told him, I said, you're exhibiting signs of manic behavior, the rapid speech, the thoughts, he's spending money at certain times of the year. And then I talked to him about a month, like a while back, his girlfriend a while back, I spoke to her. And she said he suffered head trauma, 2 concussions when he played football in the past. And I said, and there was no sign of demonic possession. I noticed some manic behavior about him. And that's why I say, and guess where he got the demonic possession part from?
Where?
A tarot card reader.
No. Actually,
see my point?
You brought up a couple good points. One with the tarot card reader, but you were also talking about something earlier that reminded me about, we call them grief vampires, or the psychics that purposely target somebody for money and feed them information allegedly from their lost one and keep having them come back, but keep having them pay. Do you find with root magic or in hoodoo, are there certain individuals that try and profit off of people, like clients?
Yeah, yeah. In our group, Hoodoo Lounge Production, on Facebook, I keep a tally every month of how many people been scammed out of money by scam artists. I put the total up there. I said, y'all gonna keep on letting it go? And I often find in today's time, you see a lot of women, and particularly African-American women, they get scammed by other African women with these conjure names, and they're looking for like that companionship, that camaraderie, like from another sister, like, and stuff. And they're like, well, she got the big afro, she might have the bone in the nose or whatever, and she seems convincing, and she read tarot, and she says she could get me this job, and I don't have to do nothing, or she could bring this man back. I meet people say, I gave this woman $800 and nothing happened. One girl gave $1,200. I found another woman where I get my candles from. from time to time. Met her in the store, she was with her client. They had a shopping cart stacked to the rim of candles. To the rim. So I start talking to him, and what it is, the lady husband been living with his girlfriend for like 9 months. So the wife now is the side chick. So the woman called me at night. There was supposedly root knowledge. She said, well, I just started learning how to do root. And yeah, there is elements you have to learn to this. That's a fact. She said, I already took about almost $2,000 worth of money from this lady. And I don't know if I could keep it up. I said, ma'am, you're not operating on integrity. Now, you asked me earlier about love spells. I don't get too much into love spells at 42 years old because of the fact I'm big on metaphysics, and I'm big on people coming to grips. Maybe the universe is trying to show you something better, that you don't need this person. If they've been abusing you, not taking care, help take care of your kids, why do you want them in your life?
Yeah.
The universe is trying to rid you of this problem and maybe open you up to someone that's better and you're more deserving of. And I tell people, I say, well, you know, I have declined clients. I'm like, no, I'm not giving you nothing for that. It's one thing somebody messing with your lover and y'all together and sync and you love each other. But if the person left you and they cheating on you, they've been abusing you, taking advantage of you, nah, I'm not giving you nothing for that. I say no often. I'm very comfortable with saying no.
That's very interesting to see that the same type of exploitation, and I could see that people seeking out love, like you said, or it seems to be people seeking out love or people looking to connect with lost ones. That seems to be the big hook that people.
Yes.
The other thing too that we see is spiritual cleansing. When people are paying people money, it could be $500 or higher to come into your home to clear it of a spirit, when we know that that is absolute 100% bullshit, because we don't even understand how human consciousness works, and let alone have somebody come in and be able to tell that human consciousness to leave the property.
That's right.
You know, and then charge somebody $500 to $1,000 to do it. That's the one thing that they train you, especially at the Ryan Education Center, is that as soon as you see that they can guarantee to get rid of your ghost, that is a huge red flag, because nobody can guarantee that.
Scientifically, we don't even know what a ghost really is.
Well, exactly. We know there's certain things on Earth that are normal that can cause people to see ghosts. Like, you know, Darryl's interviewed the late Dr. Michael Persinger, who developed the God helmet, which was a skidoo helmet that had electrodes in it, and he could increase the electromagnetic field until people started seeing apparitions. Some of them saw religious figures like Jesus and the Virgin Mary. Some of them said that their psychic abilities had opened up. Another thing that I started lecturing as well whenever I do lectures is carbon monoxide. There's been a couple of new studies out now.
That's right.
This was in 1921. A family was experiencing a haunting. When the psychical investigators came in, they found out that their furnace was faulty and giving off excessive amounts of carbon monoxide, which was causing the haunting characteristics. As recently as 2005, there was a lady getting a shower, and an apparition appeared in the shower with her, and of course she freaked out, called some paranormal investigators. They were able to find out that she had just recently had a hot water tank improperly installed that was giving off excessive amounts of carbon monoxide. So what I ended up doing after reading those two studies is I ended up buying our organization a gas detector. So it detects 4 different types of gas: oxygen, carbon monoxide, low-level explosive gas, and H2S gas, which would be interesting because that has a sulfuric smell to it. So that would be interesting to take that into alleged dynamic haunting case, where you often hear people talk about the smell of sulfur.
Yeah, and like I said, I've been called out for spiritual cleansing, but not to remove, like you said, some people say, I guarantee I can remove this from your house. Like, I had a lady that had a massage parlor. She sent me a videotape at 5 in the morning. One of the doors to the massage room just popped open. And it was black and white footage, clear as day, you can see it. So, but when I went out there, like I said, I'm going to do assessment first. And I checked the room, made sure there was any AC. Maybe there was something, a vent open. I checked the door locks, made sure that the door locks was firm and sturdy. And I honestly didn't get anything. But the woman's going through a very bad divorce. And she's a massage therapist with her own practice. And I say that The reason why I say that is, if we're at a party and the three of us get into a fight with some lads and stuff, that's going to change the energy of the party. People are going to be whispering in the corner, oh my God, did you see him? He kicked him in the head. Da, da, da. You know, it changes the energy, the dynamic. It's not fun, sociable anymore. That's energy, right? And I say that because she hasn't been herself, which I knew. She going through a divorce. If anybody's been through a divorce, you know it's going to change your energy. And like I said, the door thing could have been the lock. It could have been maybe the door was slightly cracked and it just happened to pop open at 4 or 5 in the morning. But I didn't go in there telling her, say, hey, you got some spirits in here with Timberlands on and we're going to have to remove them. No, I went in there, I burned sage. I created a peaceful environment in the essence of healthy aroma. Where people come in, you burn a lot of sage. And I got other stones here that you burn it's going to make you feel naturally more relaxed. That's what the stones do. It gives off a fragrance and odor that makes you feel relaxed and calm. And when she came back from church, I did it on a Sunday, she was like, my place feels so calm. And I sat down and it haven't felt like that. I told her what I burned. I prayed over it, some prayer over it and stuff. And I told her, I gave her a cleansing and creating positive energy in an environment, metaphysical positive energy versus saying, yeah, that's Tyrone with them Timberlands on over there. That's his ghost. That's his ghost. I heard his ghost pager go off. That's him.
No, that's a great story. Now, in any of your paranormal investigations that you have gone to, has there been anything that you would classify that you've seen or experienced during the investigation that would be supernatural or unexplained?
Georgia, Savannah, everything's paranormal down there. Like my sister and I went down there and we kept hearing like drums beating, and that's what the people. There's a bed and breakfast in Savannah near the Riverwalk. And what prompted me to go down there was because I started reading the reviews of people saying great place to sleep at overnight. The breakfast is good, but then some people say it's just me, but I keep hearing like drums beating at night. And so my sister and I, we stayed out there till 6:30 to 7 in the morning. I did hear drums beating. And this is minor. And I looked all around, made sure there wasn't no college marching band around, none of that stuff. It seemed like when this fog comes up, you can hear drums beating. I don't know what it is. I couldn't explain it, but I did hear drum beating. But I say that because there's a Confederate cemetery not too far away from there in walking distance. Now, in the Southeast here, Savannah and Charleston are the two most haunted places. I still have seen like certain things with spirits in my own home. Like matter of fact, just the other day, and I'll share this with you. My sister and my mom has had a little rift with each other. My father's deceased. And I was telling my girlfriend this, and she was laying in bed with me. And I wasn't sleeping. I felt the energy and present. I roll over and I didn't see like a figure, but I could feel the presence and the energy, and the hair starts on my neck, and I could like kind of hear like a voice saying, tell your sister and mother to like fix that, work on that. And I heard it like twice, and I was like nudging my girlfriend in bed, like, hey. And it's like about 6, probably 7 in the morning. And I think that was my dad talking to me. His presence saying like, hey man, have your sister and mother fix that. And but I say in our community, we get messages from family members, and I get a lot of that from people like, hey, I saw my aunt sitting at the foot of the bed. And it's always in the bedrooms. And hey, could it be high blood pressure? I don't know. You talked about the lady talking about the bed trimmer. I thought about maybe that person have high blood pressure too. That'll make you shake and feel things too. I don't know. But all I just know is these messages, where are these messages coming from and why they relate to the situation that people going on? Is that a direct correlation? Is it a coincidence?
And that's the thing with the paranormal is there's so many. It's not cut and dry, right? I mean, like there's
no.
It could have very well been your father trying to tell you to patch things up, like get your sister and your mother to patch things up. Like you said, you were in that sleep-wake kind of state as well, right? I mean, yeah, that's the thing. But it is very, it is very fascinating. And I mean, personally, I would probably lean towards that it was your dad, probably trying to pass along the message, to you.
Well, that kid from that prison, I believe that was real. I wasn't in no sleep-wake condition. Cause I saw that a couple of times, and he was great looking. And people say, well, if it was a ghost, it probably looked great. I don't know that. He was great looking. But then when the staff told me, I kept it to myself until after I had the surgery, and the staff told me, like, yeah, when they pulled him out of his cell, he was great.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting you mention that too, because, for example, I know people have seen the spirit of my father at my mother's old house in Lower Sackville. But one person saw him. He had hepatitis C. He got it through the blood system and passed away really young. He was only 48. But some people said that they saw him as he looked when he was 48. And then other people said that when they saw him, he was younger. And they would point to like a photograph, like he almost looked like that when he was like 10 years younger. So it's interesting that, apparitions can kind of present themselves to us in the way that they want to. Like some people will report them wearing different clothing at times and things like that. So it's that extrasensory perception. Somehow they're able to, change that perception to us. And,
right.
And obviously that kid, that was the image that he was giving you of what he looked like, at that time. What were we going to say, Jerry?
I was going to say that I'm a big critic of technology being used in the hunt for ghosts, because nothing will ever find a ghost for you. But the one and only way, there is one way, and that is seeing it for your own eyes, somebody who can't possibly be there. In your case, you saw the ghost of somebody who could not possibly be there. So
right.
that is more exciting to me than somebody who hears something on a tape recorder they couldn't hear when they were actually at the spot, speaking in English when they're in a German castle, things like that. And so that was really exciting. Now, the interesting thing, and you mentioned your father, the interesting thing, my mother, every time somebody in the family died, something would happen. She would never tell us. I never knew I grew up actually in a haunted bedroom. Anyway, apparently in 1977, my uncle, Uncle Tony, died. He was one of the first heart operations that they did at the Victoria General Hospital here in Halifax, and it didn't go well. So anyway, he died, and she said that that night, and for 2 more nights, which would go together, she would hear 3 knocks under the bed. And after my father died in 2008, she said she heard a lot of noise. There was a lot of noise connected with that, more like people moving furniture and stuff like this. And the things she was describing at that point, I can't speak to the 1977 episode at all, which happened in my bedroom. So anyway, why do people tell me this? And so, but anyway, I said to her, and in the first 2 years of grief, it's very common that there will be paranormal-like phenomena experienced by the widow or widower. And I tried to explain to her, she wouldn't do anything to try to understand what was going on, which was driving me crazy because I want to understand. So finally, at the end of it, I explained to her probably what it was, because Mom has had, she's passed on, Mom had a strong anxiety disorder, which is where I get mine from, thank you. And so I figured this was sleep, paralysis, sleep, hypnagogic. But I said to her, I said, I said, open your eyes. She would never even open her eyes. I said, you open your eyes, it'll stop if it's fake. If
right.
it's real, it'll continue. So open your eyes, Mom. She said, she just kind of stopped talking about it afterwards. But it was just that she was not interested in pursuing understanding the phenomena that was around her, and that she believed all of it was paranormal. And there were a couple other things as well. And she wouldn't stay in my bedroom. We used to switch around the bedrooms downstairs, theirs and mine. Mine was in the front of the house, and then they'd switch every couple of years or so, because Mom always had to move the furniture, just like I'm going to be moving the furniture here soon, because we're just crazy. We don't like things static, I guess. And so this was very interesting. She would refuse to be alone in that room. And I remember she gave us the example, and I remember this vividly. My aunt came up, my father and my aunt were going to give blood. And this would be sometime in Uncle Anthony was dead. So late 70s, let's say. I don't know how old I was then, but I remember it was a big car. And we got in the car and we went down and blah, 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 blah. And apparently that's when she heard the second time. She was awake this time. The first time she was, and apparently she woke Dad up, and Dad also heard it too. The only other thing Dad ever said was weird was when they were in the Bermuda Triangle, when he was on the HMCS Yukon. And we can talk about that. Nothing really exciting, just weird looking like, the sky and the sea. But anyway, so she said that was the night. And after that, they never put the bedroom in my old room. It always stayed,
What was it that they heard?
3 knocks. She heard the 3 knocks again. And 3 knocks is very common here in Nova Scotia in our folklore for death signs. And it can happen before or after the death. It can be a forerunner, or it can be I don't know how you classify it. Perhaps a way for the dead to contact us, or it could just be overwrought people, imagining things, dreaming things, or whatever.
You know what the interesting thing is? I know you're going to kill me for bringing it up, but this reminds me of the Phillips experiment.
Jesus H.
In
Christ.
Toronto, because I'm not sure if you're familiar, Dedrick, with the Phillips experiment.
It wasn't even a topa. But you know what? Topa's that's the actual correct name. Tupa, and it's not created by those bozos in Toronto. But anyway,
so the Phillips experiment. Toronto used to have a group called the Toronto Society for Psychical Research. I talked to the actual society.
Used to.
I talked to the Society for Psychical Research. They said that even though they had that name, they weren't really affiliated with each other. But basically what they did is they wanted to run an experiment where they created their own poltergeist. So for a year to a year and a half, they would meet at the Toronto Society for Psychical Research office, and they came up with a backstory for this ghost named Philip. And he had like this backstory, and they would always talk to him and ask him to do stuff. And all of a sudden, they would start getting raps on the table. Wow. And they invited the media in, and there's a clip on YouTube, you can find it. But they actually would ask a question like, Philip, do you want another beer? Rap once for yes, twice for no, or whatnot. And it would actually start to rap. And they recorded those rappings, and they did send them to the actual Society for Psychical Research. And it's interesting because you and I were just looking at the Enfield poltergeist case again. Yeah. We're looking to re-examine it using the new science and technology that's available. And the poltergeist raps have a different acoustic than regular raps. So when you record like you knocking on the table and look at the spectrograph, it's completely different for whatever reason whenever you record a poltergeist rap. And these Philip knocks matched like this, almost the same kind of raps from the Enfield. They were different.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's really interesting.
And there's going to be a third batch of knocks when I try to knock some sense into that big effing head of his.
But I was just thinking, it could have been. That's the thing with the paranormal. There could be multiple explanations. It could have been your uncle reaching out. Yeah. Or, I mean, technically, it could have been psychokinesis causing it.
Yeah, or she just hallucinated it.
Or it could have been a medical psychological thing. Yeah.
Exactly. And with her anxiety, at the time, and Mom was definitely. It's funny how I went through my training through bachelor's and master's in psychology while she was alive, and also did the doctorate in parapsychology. But it's funny how you get focused in psychology, and I did social work too on child abuse and family violence, and so anyway, it's funny how you get focused on your areas, and something will miss you in somebody that you know so well. And it wasn't really until I diagnosed myself in 2010 as having, well, they call it generalized anxiety disorder, but the British are better because they differentiate extreme anxiety disorder, which is what I would come under, and Mom would have came under. And so, and both Mom and Dad had it. And so I was screwed from the very beginning, genetically speaking. And so I mean, it could have been just a hallucination. I hallucinate from time to time. I've heard music, I've seen people, and that was when I was under extreme stress, right after Mom died. I heard music for 2 hours. I heard her moving. I used to be in the basement. She was upstairs and then there's an upstairs again, the top of the house, my old bedroom. And so of course I would hear her get up. TV room was right above my bedroom, the actual haunted room, actually. I hear her get up off the couch, go, turn the TV off, whatever, go towards the bathroom. I'd hear noises and she'd go to bed and all that kind of stuff. Heard that for 10 years. That took care of her after Dad died. And then what happened was there was one time afterwards, I moved, within a month, I moved back up to my old bedroom because I love my old bedroom. And, and that was for psychological reasons, obviously. And so anyway, but for 2 hours one night, I heard the exact same thing. Her getting off the couch, going up, doing all her business and everything. Now, the only thing I could possibly, touch it to physically was the fact that there were a lot of birds on the houses that night. And maybe my brain did not understand what they were, and so interpret them in what sounds they kind of sounded like. And because it was above me, I had total hallucination of sounds that weren't there.
But the other thing too, if you look at it from a supernatural explanation, it could have been residual energy. That was the regular type of behavior and pattern that your mother did.
Yeah, but Mom never ever got up and went to the bathroom on top of the house on the roof.
No.
Now, if I was in the basement and heard it again, then I would be.
Yeah, no.
I hear it here. There's a den. Their bedroom is right here. We're in the living room, obviously. This is the outside. There's the kitchen and there's the den. And I will hear the sounds to this very day. Now, sometimes it's sounds that will trigger it, and I'll know what it is. It's one of the people next door or above me. But even to this day, I will also hear her get up off that couch and turn the TV off. And,
that's interesting.
And I'll still jump up. If I hear a bang, I'm still up off out of that bed, ready to go help Mom. And it's because for 10 years, that's what I did. So a little bit of PTSD thrown in there as well. And we've got nice little soup cooking here. You gotta laugh at mental illness. If you don't, you're just gonna go crazy. No pun intended, I guess. Anyway, so I mean, it's interesting, and it's there's other things too. And so anyway, it's interesting, like you said, is it a medical psychological thing happening? Is it intense stress? Is it his favorite RSPK, psychokinesis, especially to do with that fucking fill-up thing. And so it's very interesting, and it's the evidence has to lead you, and that's why it's great that you do such an assessment, because that's what you're doing. It's looking for the evidence, and that's going to lead you to the theory. The problem with TV, besides the fact that they bullshit it, is the fact that they automatically go to these creepy places and say, oh, it's an old abandoned castle in Germany. It's got to be haunted.
That's
so
right.
Go, and if you hear, their dog farts in the night, they think it's a spiritual experience with the ghost. And
That's
so,
right.
They have done
backwards.
They have done studies as well where Kieran O'Keefe over there in the UK's parapsychologist, he did a study with a couple other parapsychologists. They found that when you do tell somebody, so they had a control group where they told them that it was haunted, or vice versa, and then they had a group where they didn't tell them anything, and they found statistically the people that knew that there was a haunted history were reporting more paranormal phenomena at that haunted location. So I mean, obviously, like that could play a role. Stress seems to play a role.
By health conditions, like I said, your blood pressure go up high, you're gonna see some flicker pill. I see orbs. Well, you just suck down a whole bottle of salt. You know?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, medical conditions, certain psychological conditions. In fact, like a lot of possession cases mirror mental illness.
Yeah.
And you have to look for the things that can't be blamed on mental illness. So like anything levitating, speaking in an actual language, not just mumbo jumbo, but speaking an actual language that the person doesn't know. There's been cases where the person can tell, a private detail about you that Darryll and I should have no idea about. You know what I mean? Unless they went and talked to somebody and found that story out. But there's certain supernatural elements that you have to look for. But a lot of times it can be masked by mental illness as well. So,
and the problem is, of course, is that ghosts have almost played themselves out. A couple of years ago, just the same year Mom died, I got a email from a company who wanted to do a ghost show, and this was going to take place in Alaska. And they had pretty much used up all the United States, the lower 48 states. So they were going to go to Alaska and do a lot of stuff about mysterious and blah, blah, blah. So I answered back rather in the, kind of sarcastic way I can be sometime. Said that, you've run out of ghosts, eh? Well, maybe they're kind of tired now, and because they want to talk about demonology. I said, and demonology is the hot new topic. And Alaska hasn't been, mined for this, so it should be a pretty good thing. They never got back to me again because they want somebody to go and say, yes, this is a ghost and blah, blah, blah. But the thing in demonology is, I think a lot of it is the fact that people are either burnt out about ghosts, or also there's people that are driving that, including TV, more demonology now, which you never saw 5 years ago.
Oh, absolutely.
And so,
that's right.
That's right. And it's clouding the issue. So now you've got all the demonologists and everything. And so it's one more thing you have to try to get through to try to find what is at the, the heart of the situation. And between TV and the internet, two worst things ever to happen to, to anything supernatural or religious or anything,
right,
for that matter. And it just makes, our job so much harder because people come with expectations that we're going to act a certain way. They've had a certain thing, and all we're going to do is say, yes, that's what it is. And maybe we're going to be able to get rid of it.
And don't forget, turn the lights out and wander around.
Yes, in the dark.
You got to turn the lights out, and you have to show up with a big black van with your logo on it outside of it, too.
Yeah, definitely.
You gotta have one of those too. But it's funny. I stopped at Halloween time. They have these haunted forests and house that you go in. And I stopped over there the other day, and I'm talking to the lady, introduced myself, and I show them my website and everything. We're just talking about paranormal stuff. But I kept explaining to her, I'm like, well, yeah, I'm in school to be a parapsychologist, and I'm talking from a scientific perspective about paranormal. And she just kept going on and on about the place she did. And they said a lot of people died there, and then we got some real good activity when we was out there. And I was like, yeah, and I come back for the site. I was like, oh, it's going over their head. And I say that because, like you said, I think trends. TV has made a lot of things trendy, and you don't see too many people go from a real scientific perspective of it, which I find to be far more intriguing, because now you really have the possibility of saying, hey, maybe there is something for real going on versus, you know, I'm not going to throw shade at somebody, but somebody walk around with an iPhone with some apps they downloaded.
No, it's true. I just did an event at the Fortress of Lewisburg, and I listened to 3 hours of audio that was collected over a period of 2 nights, and I had absolutely nothing on it. No electronic voice phenomena, nothing. The only thing that happened while we were there, we did experience some rapid battery drain and multiple different things. There was a camcorder that died rapidly that was fully charged. There was artificial lighting that the Fortress provided because some of the buildings don't have power to them. That went through 3 or 4 fully charged batteries when it should last the whole night. And then there was a flashlight that was fully charged that died rapidly as well. But one of the tools we were allowing the tourists to kind of play with was the K2 electromagnetic field radiation detector, which I am not a fan of. It's a very cheap EMF reader. You can get it off eBay for like $35. It's highly sensitive, so it can pick up cell phone signals and stuff. And it was interesting because the tourists thought it was cool because they're playing around with this EMF reader, and it's got lights on it and stuff, so it looks really sexy for TV. And you've actually talked about that, where they wanted you to get an EMF reader with lights on it because it looks sexy. But basically, you know, this thing was going off. But when I had the higher quality EMF readers there, I've got the Lutron, and I've also got the new GQ 390 that Lloyd Auerbach had recommended. It's like a $350 EMF. Big difference when you pay $350 compared to $35.
$30, yeah.
Absolutely nothing was showing up on those EMF readers. So, you know, tools of the trade as well are important. Because
and a lot of the tools they use, they don't even calibrate first.
No, they're not calibrated.
That's what I'm about to say. The calibration is off. And if you're using, like, a lot of people now are using, like, cell phones. There's a lot could go wrong with using cell phones.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot. Like, just so much. And then you could get a faulty phone that's just faulty in general. I know, because I'm waiting for my phone exchange to come in the mail. But there's just so much that could go wrong with that. I prefer, if I go out, I prefer to use, like you said, real equipment. I've been to places and experienced cameras going out and things of that nature. Matter of fact, it was this church in Statesboro, Georgia. My brother and I. That was a creepy experience for me. And I'm going to be honest, I'm already going in with fear. I'm not afraid of too much stuff, but I just don't do too well with hearses and caskets and that type of stuff. That scares me a little bit. Guy with a chainsaw chasing me don't scare me.
That's what time we're going to have him on the show.
You know, that scared me. And, you know, we got out, and this church is smack in the rural area of Statesboro, Georgia. There's no houses around us for the next 10 miles out, literally. The Ogeechee River is probably 5 miles out in the distance. And my dad always told me stories about this church. People used to see a man wearing a zoot suit standing underneath a blue light, and town people said it was a ghost. For years, for decades, this went on. My dad told me this since the 80s, and he's deceased now. So I said, well, let's go. They just built a new church to connect it to the old church, which they do a lot in the South. And we went out there with our equipment and everything. I went out there with what my recorder? I had a really nice voice recorder. I went out there, and everything started malfunctioning as soon as we got out the car. And I'm always careful about if I'm bringing candles and you know, trying to, you know, do the whole spiritual cleaning thing, add that into there too. Because sometimes I do that, depending on where I'm at. Like, well, let me clean the air first with positive energy before we go. Because I say, heck, I could be at a family reunion, there's negative energy. But anyway, so I went out there, and all our stuff started malfunctioning. Also, another lesson I learned, bring more than just your brother with you on this one. My sister was at work. I was like, oh, let's go. We can do it without her friend. Let us two go. We're men. Yeah, right. The cameraman shaking. The camera goes out. The light's not working. Kept hearing this banging in the wood. Bang. It was like, oh, bang, bang. There's no houses around. So what's banging in the woods? We go behind the church. A blue light keep flickering. The cemetery has a dim light over it. Now, I don't know what was going on. Like I said, I don't do too well with cemeteries sometimes. And they had.
We're gonna have fun down the south.
We're gonna go dragging you down to that cemetery. Oh yeah.
But they had baby caskets above ground. Like, I think they were moving the body. I tell you, they were building a new church. They already built it, but they were expanding stuff. So they probably were shifting bodies around, which they often do in the South. You know, they'll dig up by and move. But all I just know is it got real creepy. Once the equipment went out, my lights went out. The candle wouldn't stay lit. There was no wind at all, and the candle wouldn't stay lit. Now, I operate off of why the hair standing up on my neck, why my stomach bubbling, why I feel uncomfortable here. I don't need too much equipment to tell me that, you know? And I just felt like there was a presence. There was an actual presence. Not an evil one, but just more than one present, like you shouldn't be here. You're disrupting something by being here and what you're doing. And I always know my brother, like, hey man, the camera went out again, the light's not coming on. This banging is getting stronger and louder in a more aggressive way. We was in two separate cars. All I know, that Crown Vic and his sports car was flying down that road so fast out of there. And like I said, there was no street lights or nothing around this church. It's right in a rural area. There's nothing. There's no lights for like the next 4 miles out. It's just darkness.
That's really cool. Actually,
yeah.
I like to check that out.
Yeah, too. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really cool.
Yeah. Like I said, if you come down to Statesboro, Georgia, outside of Savannah, it's 30 miles outside of Savannah. There's so much cultural stuff, old built. Where my dad is buried at, no, not even the pastor would go back there at nighttime.
Wow.
It's a half a mile or a mile like dirt road, trees growed in, tall trees growed in when it formed like a tunnel. And you ride it down this long, it's a one-way dirt road. And when you get out there, it's an old church that was probably built in the early 1900s. And it's not a big church, it's a small church and the cemetery. And no one won't go back there to see their loved ones. They won't be caught back there at nightfall. They don't care if it's 5:30 in the evening in the wintertime. I done heard stories, people say they seen red eyes. I won't go back there now because I can deal with going into a house. It's just something with cemeteries. I'll go with you guys and go visit, but I'll just tell you, like, my senses are real sensitive.
Oh, that'll be awesome.
Just wait till he goes to New Orleans.
And it's particularly Southern cemeteries, like New York cemetery, no problem. But the Southern cemeteries, there's a strong spiritual aura about the Southern cemeteries. And they're so historical.
Yeah, I believe that 100%. Yeah. How could people find you? What's your website, your Instagram, Twitter, all that social media?
All right.
TikTok, if you got that. I don't know how to use that one yet, but
You're only supposed to like dance or something for 15 seconds.
Sarah uses it, but she told me I'm not allowed to download it because I'll never be off my cell phone because I'm already on my cell phone too much. But how can people find you? What kind of projects you got on the go? You working on anything? Let us know.
Yeah. You can check out my website, hoodoolounge.net. As you might see Hoodoo Lounge Production up there. And the reason I call it Hoodoo Lounge Production is because we talk about paranormal, parapsychology, metaphysical stuff, and I deal with a lot of podcasting, streaming. So we're a Hoodoo Lounge Production or to deal with spirituality and paranormal realm. That's hoodoolounge.net. You can find me on Twitter under at Hoodoo Studio. You can also join our group, which is a very large group where we have movie night on paranormal activity and different things. Hoodoo Lounge Production is the name of the group. Hoodoo Lounge Production on Facebook. There's about 7,000 members in the group. We do talk about spell work, paranormal activity, and indie horror films. To those out there, I'm a big horror buff, especially on zombies. I'm also, some of the projects I'm working on, I'm being cast in my very first film, filmed by Sean C. Phillips, called Amityville Karen. And I'm playing the role of myself, and my company brand will be mentioned in there. And I just got cast for a second role for Halloween, which is actually co-produced by the original Michael Myers from the 70s.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, so that just took place. So those are the projects that I'm working on. We do have a paranormal investigation on a community in downtown Columbia, South Carolina. We're probably going to start that one next month. The whole community used to be a giant prison that overlooked the whole city of Columbia, and they tore it down in 2000. And it was built in 1870 something. They built it. And it was there. They just tore it down in 2000, and they built this extravagant private community apartment complex with their own Starbucks, everything on the actual foundation of the prison.
Wow.
On the actual, they didn't tear down the stones and nothing. And the people threw barbed wire in the water in case the inmates try to break out. So I'm going down there because I've been actually talking with residents on and off, and they just said they feel uncomfortable. So before I go and do my assessment, but that's going to be a big show for us. But project-wise, movies, magazines, you guys stuff, radio shows. You can also download my show on Spotify, Hoodoo Lounge Radio, where we talk about paranormal and root work on there, and that's on Spotify, Anchor FM, and iTunes.
Awesome. You'll have to keep us up to date on that investigation. That one sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
Yes. No, it was great having you. You know, I was telling Darryll about you because I had met you a couple months ago. Like I said, when you saw I was looking for stories about law enforcement, and then I put you in touch with Donna. So I know you and Donna have been talking, and we're really excited. Hopefully we can get something on the go with all three of us. I think it would be a great dynamic. I think it would be hilarious. I think we'd have a lot of fun and some good laughs and stuff. So, and I'll let Donna know that we filmed this episode. She can have a listen to it as well. No, that's phenomenal. I appreciate you talking to us tonight, and we learned a lot for sure.
I appreciate you guys, and I just want to just really clarify, because boy, man, the root work community will come from my head if I misrepresent them. But you know, I'll get my car egged up, everything. But no, I really want to stress that voodoo is a religion, and root work is a form of open floor spirituality. And I just want people to be clear about that when they really dealing with the two. If you want a religion, voodoo is the religion. If you want an open floor spirituality of manifesting behaviors or your desires, or feeling safe and protected, then you look at hoodoo.
That's great. Yeah,
great.
That's phenomenal. And I think people will find this really interesting, because until I had talked to you, I had heard of voodoo, obviously, but I had never really heard of hoodoo. So, for me, even this episode, I learned a lot just from talking to you. So, thanks for sharing all your knowledge and experience.
Well, thank you guys for having me on, man. I really appreciate y'all, and I'm looking forward to networking and doing some amazing projects in the future.
Yeah. Us too.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, that was an interesting conversation. I certainly learned a lot. I'm very excited if we do get to work with Dedrick in the future. There's just so much haunted history down that end. I think you and I would. I think we'd be busy.
Yeah.
Sure.
Definitely. When talking about Ghost Project Canada, and that's reasonably easy thing to do. It's kind of hard at times to get stories from families that have not obviously published it, but as to get, regular stuff, it's reasonably easy to do. The one I'm dreading, of course, is Ghost Project USA, because there is so much, and also because, of course, there's so much being created, BS being created as well. The UK will be another one. But anyway, and the southern US, particularly the old Confederacy, and where the Acadians were ended up in Louisiana. They brought also their beliefs and kind of melded together as their, as he said, and there's a lot down there to, just fascinating stuff to really to read and to look into. I mean, and the visuals alone, just as a photographer, I'm thinking, oh, great, what great pictures of graveyards would be wonderful. And then as a videographer, I'm thinking, oh, wow, great visuals would be for that. And parapsychologist thinking, wow, what great ghosts there are down there. So I'm not sure if I get down there exactly which I'm going to be chasing most of.
That's true. That's true.
Forget. You'll yell, there goes the ghost, and I'll be snapping a picture of something really, neat.
It's it's rich with history, so it's definitely something that hopefully we can manifest some sort of show together.
Yeah.
And Darryll and I, we've got lots of projects in the go, as you heard. Always collecting stories for Ghost Project Canada. Still working on that electronic database for Ghost Project Canada. It's definitely a work in progress.
Need a volunteer in Excel.
Yes, yeah. We just hired some more people, or hired. We're not profit, so we don't have paid positions. But I just beefed up our New England numbers because it was only Spencer and Mike down there. So actually met a girl from the Ryan Education Center, and our 2 demonologists that we had on last week. So it's actually all 3 of them. It actually worked out that all 3 of them were interested in, maybe it's because they enjoyed having a conversation with us for an hour or so, but they all wanted to help out down there, which is great because they already work together and they already have a working dynamic. So we were able to get them. So then we have 5 people down there, 5 people up here. So we're always busy. We got a couple cases on the go right now, so a couple of parapsychological cases we're working on. And then, of course, our event is coming up October 16th, 2021 at the Westin, Nova Scotian. Tickets are available, ppri.net/tickets. Don't wait. Try and get them as soon as you can. There's only a limited amount of tickets. Not going to find an event like this with 2 people with this kind of experience. You can ask us any questions you want about supernatural. We're going to have real equipment there that's used in parapsychological investigations. We're going to have real objects that were surrendered or located or found or whatever you want to use, given to Darryll and I throughout the course of our careers that are both haunted and cursed. It's going to be a great time. We'll even fill you in on some more ghost stories on the West.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm waiting for.
Yeah, and so anyway, I guess until next time,
we'll see you.
The Dueling Parapsychologist Podcast, an educational and entertaining podcast with Canadian parapsychologists Elliott Van Dusen and Darryll Walsh. To reach out to the Dueling Parapsychologists, see our Facebook page, Twitter, and Instagram accounts, or email us directly at info@ppri.net.